Everyday conversation is full of mental shortcuts. We regularly rely on familiar cultural clichés to make quick points and move on. These shortcuts are completely natural, but when we try to build a logical argument on top of one, we run into a major problem. A catchy phrase is not actual, verifiable evidence. To understand why, we can look at the principles of logic outlined in the textbook Attacking Faulty Reasoning, specifically what it identifies as the fallacy of popular wisdom. This fallacy occurs when someone appeals to an aphorism, folk wisdom, or quote-unquote common sense, instead of providing relevant data. Doing this directly violates the sufficiency criterion of a good argument, which demands enough actual evidence to prove a claim. To see why clichés fail as evidence, consider how often they cancel each other out. We are told that two heads are better than one, but also that too many cooks spoil the broth. Because popular wisdom constantly contradicts itself depending on which saying you choose, it cannot serve as an independent foundation for truth. It requires real-world data to back it up. Let's break down the first variation of this fallacy, the misapplied aphorism. Imagine a common scenario in relationship counseling. A young woman is trying to maintain serious relationships with two different people at the same time. Her counselor advises her to end one of them, leaning on a familiar phrase, "You just can't have your cake and eat it too." We can deconstruct this advice into a standard logical format to isolate the premises from the conclusion. Premise 1, you have two relationships. Premise 2, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Conclusion, therefore you must end one of the relationships. The logical flaw lies entirely in that second premise. While consuming a physical piece of cake logically destroys it, there is nothing practically or logically incompatible about sustaining two emotional relationships. The counselor is using a familiar phrase to mask a false equivalency. The argument sounds profound, but structurally it is completely hollow. The second variation takes the form of folk wisdom. We often see this surface in academic settings, like a dorm room the night before a major exam. One student tries to convince another to close their textbooks and go to sleep, claiming, "If you don't know it now, you never will." This is a line graph tracking short-term knowledge retention. It shows a sharp increase in information grasped during a dedicated pretest study session. The empirical data directly contradicts the folk wisdom. Repeating an old wives' tale does not overwrite objective reality. Surrendering to unverified advice often leads people to act against their own best interests. The final and most evasive form of this fallacy is the appeal to undefined common sense. Consider a couple debating what to do with a recent inheritance. They have to choose between paying off their existing mortgage or investing the money elsewhere. One partner provides a specific mathematical rationale, pointing out that an investment will yield a higher interest rate than the mortgage currently costs them. The other partner dismisses the math completely, arguing that paying off debt is just common sense. Let's test your understanding. Pause the video for a moment and answer this. Why exactly does the phrase common sense fail the sufficiency criterion in this specific debate? Common sense is a rhetorical title. It is used to avoid doing the hard work of proving a point, and in a financial discussion, it provides zero actual mathematical evidence. Treating a vague cultural feeling as an unassailable truth is a manipulative conversational trick. It shuts down rational debate without offering proof. Now that we can identify the fallacy, we can actively neutralize it in our own everyday arguments. The first psychological step is refusing to be intimidated. Do not let familiar sayings or the pressure of what everyone allegedly knows force you to accept a claim without evidence. When confronted with an aphorism, use the counter-cliché method. If hit with a saying, fire back with a contradictory cliché. This forces a stalemate. To break the tie, they must abandon empty phrases and explain why their saying applies, finally producing real evidence. You can also use a more direct approach. Politely ask the person what specific empirical evidence makes their piece of common sense true in this particular case. To consolidate this into a practical framework, spot it by checking if the premise is just a catchy phrase. Assess it by asking if it lacks actual evidence, and attack it by demanding proof or deploying a counter-cliché. True wisdom requires the heavy lifting of evidence. Dismantling popular clichés forces everyone to argue on the grounds of actual reality, rather than hiding behind comforting shortcuts.